Whenever anyone talks about games that are Steam Deck verified, I always say to take it with a grain of salt. Valve's verified system is a great way to see if a game could run on the Steam Deck, but it's not a great indicator of how a game runs on the Steam Deck. It isn't the greatest, and there are a lot of verified games that don't really run that well, and a lot of unsupported games that actually do. Now, when developers usually get the verified badges for their games, they'll usually wipe their hands clean and say now we can market it as a great game to play on the Steam Deck with that green checkmark, but that's usually the extent of how they're going to be optimizing the game for the deck. Not many developers will actually go further in. However, that is not the case for Digital Sun Games. Digital Sun Games, the developers of Moonlighter 2, seem to have the same understanding that we do about Valve's verified system. And they want to go beyond Valve's checklist in optimizing the game for the Steam Deck, and they want your input on how they can do that. Over on the Steam Deck subreddit, the official Digital Sun Games account posted asking about what we expect from verified games. In the post, they mentioned that the verified system is a useful baseline, but it's not a perfect system. A lot of it focuses on readability and input support, and not always on deeper aspects like sustained performance, memory usage, or how the game behaves after long play sessions. If we're going to go beyond Valve's checklist, we want to do it in a direction that actually matters to players. So what do you expect from a verified game on Steam Deck? Now, even though they're asking this question, that's not to say that Digital Sun Games hasn't been doing anything to optimize for the Steam Deck yet. They've mentioned that over the last 2 months of early access, they've pushed hard to reach 60 frames per second on the Steam Deck, and that dungeons can now run at a solid 60. They're also aware that the main town in some dungeon sections can dip to around 40 frames per second, and it's not terrible, but not ideal. Now, their next big focus is going to be RAM usage, which should improve on the Steam Deck and a bunch of other devices. But they also want to know how they can improve specifically for the Steam Deck, and there were a ton of comments talking about what they could do to actually make it great to play on the go. Now, there are over 200 comments on this Reddit post, but a lot of them were talking about readability, scalable UI, and larger text sizes. Now, for those playing on the Steam Deck, these kinds of changes are absolutely needed since the Steam Deck screen is significantly smaller than what you're going to be playing on a TV or a monitor. However, it didn't stop there. Users also talked about some other great points for Steam Deck optimization, including native gamepad support, 1280 by 800 resolution support, 45 frames per second or 60 frames per second stable, the native use of a trackpad, the game bringing up the virtual keyboard on its own, and viable base settings which will not require any intervention, especially in later parts of the game. Now, some of these are actually covered in Valve's verified system, but not all of these points are used throughout the entirety of the game. And honestly, there's some really good feedback here that I think a lot of developers should take to heart when they're optimizing their game for the portable device. Personally, I could not be happier that Digital Sun Games is taking this next step. Like I said, most developers will usually wash their hands clean as soon as they get the green checkmark, but they are actually taking it further and saying we can do better than Valve's checklist. And I do believe that most developers should actually be doing this too. Now, the post has only been up for around 24 hours, so Digital Sun hasn't had any time to really do anything with this feedback, but it gives me a lot of confidence that they're going to continue to optimize the game in the right direction. Knowing that they're getting specific feedback for the Steam Deck makes me extremely happy, and I know they're already working on the game and making sure Moonlighter 2 is as great to play on the deck as it possibly can be, but going the step further to ask specifically what Steam Deck players want to see in a Steam Deck optimized game is really refreshing. Time will tell exactly how Moonlighter 2 ends up in 1.0, but with posts like this, I really do feel confident that it's going to be an essential game to play on the Steam Deck. And I can't wait to see what Digital Sun Games is going to do leading up to the 1.0 launch. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.